Hi there, and welcome to this week's episode of Spotlight On. This week we are joined by a lady who I'm sure needs no introduction, the Director of Training and Education at Peak Pilates, Zoey Trap. Hello, Zoe. How are you doing?
Hi, Trevor. It's great to be here.
Thank you so much for taking time out of your schedule to be with us today. Now, I'm sure most people in the industry are well familiar with who you are and all the great work that you do. But for those of our viewers who don't know who you are, could you just tell us a little bit about where you're from and how you came to Pilates?
Sure. Where I'm from is always a funny question for me because I've lived all over the world, as you have. And so I'm from Columbus, Ohio. I was born there. Proud Buckeye. My birth certificate says the Ohio State University. So academia was in my blood, I think, when I was born. But I truly have lived all over the world, and I'm currently living in New York, upstate in Dutchess County, where the hiking is fabulous. Pilates for me came through dance, like many of us in the field. So I walked into the room one day. We had a visiting artist in residence from Elvin Ailey, Deb Bible, and she put us all on the floor, and we started doing the mat, which I thought was a funny name for it because we had no mats. So we were rolling around on the wooden floor, and I didn't know it was Pilates at that time. I would come to know that it was Pilates. It was full-on Pilates, but it was done in a very performance-based way. So like we were all moving together and, it was all beautiful and elegant, but it really wasn't Pilates with therapeutic power or the power to really connect to movement outside of dance, if that makes sense.
It does. So how did you make that transition from having Pilates as a dance student to what sort of piqued your interest into moving into the Pilates more in a therapeutic way?
Yeah, so pretty funny story. I was a yoga teacher and a yoga therapist for many, many years, and running a yoga business, living in the UK. And David Lloyd approached me to help them to explore Pilates on a bigger level. And so I was helping them and connecting them, and I ended up connecting them to Peak Pilates. And Julie Lobdell was like, oh, wow, that was just so nice. She was the owner then. What do you want? I was like, I don't want anything. Just, help them. And about 2 weeks later, she called me back and she said, well, you're the deal. Like, they want you. And at that time, I was doing mat Pilates. I'm kind of getting ahead of myself here, I guess. I had been asked to do Pilates at a convention in Germany. And I remember when they asked me, and now you've got to remember this was the late 80s, early 90s. So Pilates was really not very well known. And the person who asked me to present it at the convention, Donna Dan, said, I want you to do this. And I said, I don't really know that. She goes, you're always doing it. Like whenever I look at you, you're like backstage doing this thing before you go out on stage. And I said, you want me to do the mat work? And she was like, yeah. So I did it. I had a group of maybe 30 and they were fleeing the floor, like, because I didn't really know how to teach it. So I just put them through the full super advanced work. and somebody came up to me after and said, that isn't Pilates. And I was like, it isn't? What was it? And they said, well, Pilates is slow.
Right.
And I was like, oh, okay. Now I was living in Europe. So I'm not going to say with who, I went and got certified and was bored out of my gourd and thought, okay, like I'm not interested at all in Pilates. So that's, why I handed Julie Lobdell, like, here, you go do this. And I said to her, I don't want to do this. I said, I thought I liked Pilates, but I don't really like it. It's like just so slow, and all I'm doing is laying there breathing, and not for me. And she said, wait, whoa, 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 what you know is right. Let me fly you to New York. So I went to New York and had a blast. I was like, oh, Pilates isn't slow. It's really hard. And that was sort of a relaunch.
I guess that brings me to my next question. Could you tell us about somebody who helped shape your career, your journey in the Pilates industry?
I'd have to say two people in two very different ways. Is that okay?
Yeah, no, that's by all means.
Colleen Glenn, who certified me comprehensively, and she's just an amazing teacher. So to have her hands on you, to get a lesson with her, is to get your body singing. And a lot of what she said at the time, because I'm coming from a science background, when I met her, I had already completed my master's in exercise science with a focus on the spine. And I was just like all full of science. And as you know, a lot of Pilates teachers, especially back then, that isn't where they were coming from. And so I would get these answers that didn't make sense to me. And they didn't make sense because I wasn't far enough into the method at the time to really understand the wisdom of what she was saying. So a lot of times now I'm like, oh, that's what Colleen meant. And so very much she shaped not only me, but Peak Pilates, bringing in concepts like the critical connections and the shapes in space that really are unique to us. And it was an honor to be on the development team with her. The other person who shaped me so much is Mary Bowen. And I met her because I was living in Connecticut. And I thought, hey, I'm in Connecticut. She's in Connecticut part-time. Why don't I go check her out? And, she's an elder. She's right here. And I didn't know what to expect, which is always a good way to go in. I had no preconceived idea. I didn't really know that much about the Jungian side of her work. And I think intuitively she knew that I didn't need more workout. I needed more work in. And so I had whiplash so many times in my life and had a really problematic neck that no one could help me with. And believe me, because I had been all over the world, I had been to every expert I could find. And I started working with her, and I started thinking about the body differently. I started trusting my own intuition. And more importantly, I learned to be different in my teaching. So one of the things I remember saying to Mary in our work together was, why am I so different when I teach yoga? Like I'm this compassionate, wise earth mother. And somehow when I go in and I teach Pilates, I'm like a Marine. And so she said, get up and teach me. And I stood up and she said, just stop. I don't even know who that is up there, because that's sure not you. And then I couldn't teach. I didn't know what to do. And she kind of left me hanging there, and we continued to work. And my students at the time, I owned a big studio. They were all like, wow, you are changing so much. And we really like this. And then one of them even said, can I come watch her work with you? Because, man, this is really great. And so all of a sudden, the human element was coming into my teaching. And I hate to say that I was a robot, but in many ways, I was a very clinical, this is how we do it. And I wasn't trusting everything I knew about the body and the mind, and that I trusted in yoga. And so where I still teach them very differently because they're very different disciplines. And I don't get into spiritual philosophy when I'm teaching Pilates. I am myself in both, which feels really good, but it took a long time.
And so we could say that that was a turning point in your
Totally.
teaching career.
I think totally. I mean, I didn't, I don't know that it brought me more students, but it brought me more joy. And it for sure brought my students more joy in teaching. And at that time, I was really thinking about quitting. I was just like, there's just something that's not being fed in my heart and that needs to be expressed. And so to kind of learn to just be human, and I think that's a pitfall sometimes of classical teaching is we get so absorbed with the rhythms and the tempos and the this and the that, and that we forget about the human in front of us. At least that was my experience.
And I guess because Pilates is such a system, it's a formula, which some would say gets repetitive. I guess if you do lose that joy in the teaching, that is when teachers suffer from burnout or start losing interest in the work. So I guess you hit the nail on the head there. Finding the joy and the humanity in your teaching is really what keeps you engaged for a lifetime.
Yeah, and I think too when you're able to be with someone in a really meaningful way for an hour, I mean the hour's up. And I would never leave teaching classically because that session format, the orders, I mean they're just rich, and to me they allow me to focus on the student because I'm not focusing on what's coming next. I'm maybe focusing about, well, let's try this building block or let's try it this way, but yeah, it's a good blend now.
I feel like you've kind of answered my next question of what do you love most about the work and our industry?
I think that the possibilities for transformation. So recently I was visiting a studio and there was a new student there. And he was an elderly gentleman who really stood at about a 30-degree angle, bent over, and everything in his body hurt. And the owner of the studio, a friend of mine, said, I have this new client. I taught him last week and we were discussing it. She said, would you teach him and let me watch? And I said, yeah, give me a little more like history. What'd you do with him last week? And so in the morning, and I know this sounds really woo-woo, but I do dream lessons. And so I woke up in the morning and I was like, okay, I'm there. And he came in and we started working. We did a full hour. He was in his 80s. And yeah, did I put a lot of extra mobilizations in? Absolutely, because he had severe arthritis. But and Pam was watching and she kept going, does that hurt? And he was like, no, I feel so good. And this feels really good. And, get on the reformer, get on. And then we're at the end of the lesson and I'm looking at his body. And again, this is where when you've taught a long time, I do think you trust your intuition. And I was like, okay, and she's watching and we're doing an ending, and I'm doing it actually holding on to the end of the Cadillac. And I'm like, now pull, your shoulder blades together, pull back, press your hips forward. Everything opened up. And Pam said, oh my gosh, look in the mirror. You're standing totally upright. And he was. And, moments like that, they're just priceless. So, yeah.
It's those moments when you realize you've actually made such a huge difference in somebody's life.
Right. Yeah, that they don't have to hurt anymore.
Exactly. Now, I know you as a very passionate person in everything that you do. What are your other passions outside of the Pilates industry, and how do you combine them? How do they blend in your life?
How do they blend? Well, I talked about yoga, and that's a huge passion of mine. And I'm a Jivamukti certified teacher. And I remember when I was first exposed to Jivamukti, because I was certified in a different way. And I just went into the studio and I was like, wow, this is like amazing alignment cueing. And I had never heard that in yoga. And I remember saying to the teacher, "Do you teach Pilates?" And she was like, "No, why?" And I said, "Well, because you're teaching alignment so well." And she said, "Well, there's only one truth to the body." So, I find that where they are very different disciplines, they're certainly both movement systems. I hike a lot, like every day. So yesterday, my true joy was it was in the 60s here, which is amazing because it's been so cold and snowy. And I I keep a list of trails that I want to go try, and I got out and explored a new trail that was spectacular with my dog. And so that's a huge, huge passion of mine, being outside, bird watching, hiking, doing anything outside, gardening. And I love to read. So uh, you can see that I say the books are the soul of the home, but I have wide reading tastes.
No, I agree. I'm all about the reading. Fortunately, these days I can keep my actual physical library a bit smaller, thanks to the joys of Kindle,
Right.
carrying it all around in your pocket.
Yeah, fiction goes on Kindle for me, and I have three huge bookcases that are more of my philosophy and things that I want to hold and highlight and annotate. Yeah,
Right. Yeah, you really can't beat that feeling of just leafing through a physical book, can you?
right. Pictures. Sometimes.
So, I mean, you mentioned hiking and being outside. How has your life been affected at the moment by COVID? And sort of what is your view on how COVID has also affected our industry?
Wow. It's caused a lot of us to take a big pivot or die. We've all seen studios close. I've also seen studios transform. I've seen teachers transform, develop new skills, develop different ways of teaching. We don't have our hands, we have our heart, we have our words. So that's been huge for me because I live alone. COVID was challenging. I have two cats and a dog and some fish, and I hung out with them, and I have been extremely careful because my husband's dead and my kids have me. So I was like, I have to take good care of myself. And, I'm looking forward. I'm finally getting the vaccination on the 18th, and I can't wait to be vaccinated because I still will not go into restaurants. I will not. Things are loosening up, but I'm not loosening up. I hike alone. I have a small pod, my niece and her husband and their little boys, and that's it. So yeah, it's been amazing. But the business of Pilates, I think, if you think about Pilates as becoming more accessible, I think in a lot of ways it has. We pivoted right away at Peak. We were like, okay, what are we going to do? And within a month, we were online with workshops and Facebook free classes and really trying to help the industry. And so when I look at that, I think, wow, that was really a great opportunity because so many people who had never been exposed to Peak got to come in and take the free Friday class or take a workshop because they didn't have to travel. And I think that's, I'm a silver linings person. That's a real silver lining.
Totally. And what has your own personal experience been with teaching online? How have you found it?
For me, I've taught online for a long, long time because I work with MIs from all over the world. I work with teachers in different places. So I'm a little more used to it than the maybe average teacher. But now I have clients as well, just regular people. And that's a little different because they're not as familiar with the work. So what I ended up doing, because I am a very touchy teacher, sometimes I have to caution myself to not touch so much. But, I ended up doing a lot of self-adjustments, kind of like I would do with my yoga class, do this and now do this, now let's go, or something in the middle where they can still benefit. And in a way, it has a little more power because they're learning to do it.
I guess it does take the learning experience and makes it a fuller experience. It's almost like taking it bizarrely by us being further away from the person and us being one-dimensional. It takes their learning experience into 3D because they're actually having to find things within their own body rather than just being told.
Right. And I think, too, we have to think out of the box.
Exactly.
Because most students don't have a full studio. So how do you bring the benefit of certain exercises to them? What do they have? Yeah.
I certainly think it encourages us as instructors to be more creative. You can't sort of fall back on your go-to cues and teachings.
Right. Yeah. And I'm always, when someone will call and say, I want to start, I'm like, well, what do you have? Like, what's in your house? We'll go through like, do you have a stability ball? I mean, we can do some reformer then. Do you have light hand weights? Do you have a TheraBand?
Right.
Do you have a dog leash? That's a good fallback.
So, I mean, what, apart from the industry aside, what has been your most significant takeaway from the pandemic and what we've all been through now in this last year?
It's been a time of, I think, greater introspection and reflection and a gentling, I think, in some ways. And it'll be interesting as we come out of it. Do we keep that connection? I know last year I was sick. I had just the regular flu. And it was so sweet because I had a group of Pilates teachers that I'm friends with, and they would do a Skype call with me every week and kind of like, how you doing? We're just going to hang out with you a while. I mean, what love. And I hope things like that reaching out and figuring out a way to be with someone never go away.
Exactly. I guess it's that issue of, I hope we've learned a lot of these lessons and that they stick with us and that we don't just fall back into our sort of habits when everything does open back up again.
Right. Yeah. Keep the appreciation.
Now, certainly another thing that has been highlighted during this year is the Black Lives Matter cause that has really been highlighted throughout the world. What is your view on diversity and inclusivity within the industry at the moment?
Yeah, we all had to step back and take a good look at that. And, especially in the position I am, looking at it more from a school level, corporate level, I had to step back and say, okay, what have I
Unknown caller.
Sorry about that, been ignorant about? What have I been remiss in? And I did a lot of watching. I would get on and listen to podcasts and watch different programming because I realized that things that I had grown up with, thinking that I was doing the right thing, like I would say my children were raised colorblind. And then I realized through educating myself what that meant and why that wasn't a good thing. And, I've had a lot of conversations. My kids educate me often, they're a generation removed. And so they'll say, well, Mom, here's another way of looking at it. And, I've been attending a diversity call. I really think it's opened my eyes up to how hard it is if you're Black to come into this industry and not just survive, but thrive. And then the whole Black community is lacking teachers. Not just the teachers are struggling, but the community is struggling. So,
Right.
That's why we did, we wanted to be reactive. So we have scholarships in place. We have 4 scholarships in big cities for Black students. So if you're out there and want to apply, Boston, Milwaukee, Houston, and Dallas are the locations. We've stepped back and looked, do we have hidden barriers up? what is our language? I used an expression of African dance syndrome on one of the videos, and then had it called to my attention that that was a pretty racist comment. And I was pretty mortified because I do teach African dance. And what I meant was movement, not race. But then I had to step back and say, well, wait a minute, but you did say it. And now that I step back and look at it, I wouldn't say that again. I would realize that even though for me it was all about movement in the rib cage and the thoracic spine that I was referring to, that sometimes accompanies the Sidekick series, it was a wrong thing to say.
Right.
And I'm sorry for that. So yeah, I think a time of us all becoming more deliberate and thoughtful in our words and our views.
I guess, as you say, it's all about introspection and actually, taking a long, hard look at ourselves and seeing if even without us possibly recognizing that we, are possibly involved in certain entrenched ways of thinking or behaving, actually being able to question ourselves and adjust, and open ourselves up to the scrutiny.
I think if everybody would say, what am I contributing to this environment? And then what can I now contribute in a different way to improve it?
Exactly. Well, I mean, it's amazing and fantastic to hear that Peak Pilates as a company is being proactive and is actually, getting in there and trying to facilitate a change.
Yeah, we early on we did a fundraiser for Black Lives Matter. We did a free class, then we did a free workshop. So our workshop was on virtual teaching, which we thought was very appropriate in the time, and it was donation based. So hopefully that helped. You never know because you don't know. We can't go, hey, everybody, did you kick in 10, 15, 20 more?
Great. So within, where we are at the moment in the world, who currently would you say is inspiring you? And do you feel we could all learn something from?
Oh, there's so much inspiration. I've got to say, one of the inspirations that I've kind of rediscovered is Brooke Seiler. I love her posts, and I find a real wisdom and a real freshness about her. I had her book ages ago. It was one of the first Pilates books I owned. And so to see her kind of reemerge, or it seems like she's reemerging, is really exciting. And to hear her talk about her tighter body helps me to understand my clients more that are tight. And yeah, just very refreshing. Also, I have a client, student, I haven't taught her in a while, Vanessa Cesar, and her posts, when I look at her, I almost weep. They're so beautiful, and there's so much control in her body. And what I know is that she came to me as a runner with neck issues and other issues. And I look at how her teaching transformed, but to look at these beautiful posts and to say, okay, I know you're not a dancer, but I would never know that, not without knowing, because they're just spectacularly beautiful, beautiful March Madness posts.
It is incredible, and it never ceases to amaze me every day just how much, as you say, inspiration there is out there when, we face it every day, and you don't even have to go looking for it. It's right there in front of you.
Sure.
So, I mean, you've already had such an amazing career, and I'm sure you are going to be going strong for many, many years to come. But looking back on your career so far, what would you say is a highlight?
Oh, a highlight. I don't know about I have so many. I mean, I love working with the MI team. So it's always a highlight, especially now. And I mean, that's been a big change. You've seen that doing the virtual training
Right.
and talk about a benefit that we would never have had. We would have continued to do it the old way live. You come in, wham, bam. It's excruciatingly difficult for a few days, and you leave at the end of the week. And I don't know how much was retained because your head's swimming and there's so much emotion.
Right.
To meet every other week for 4 hours and to be with these individuals and watch them bloom and then to get the evaluations, I'll never go back. Like, we are going to make that a mainstay. So that was certainly a highlight, doing something so new and different and having so many of you involved. I mean, it wasn't just me and an assistant, it was a whole team of mentors and guides. That was a pretty recent highlight. Yeah.
Well, I guess that almost sort of answers the question as well. So what's next for Peak Pilates and for yourself? Where do you see the company going next?
Yeah, we're working on expanding our online continuing education offerings so that people can do a virtual course or they can get a clean recorded copy. So we're test driving that right now. The course is led first virtually, then we come back, we clean it up, we record it in a controlled environment because it's just better watching than watching a live virtual, which can be fun and messy at the same time.
Right.
And so that's a new thing. We're looking at how do we move forward? What equipment do we want to? I know what I want to bring out. I ask for it constantly. A baby chair. So I think that's exciting. We've got a whole new factory process that's really improving quality. And then on the education side, I'm excited because I do have a fusion background. I do have a fitness background that I'm certainly never going to be ashamed of. We're launching a new fitness-based program called FitCore. We just got the registration, and I'm just super excited about it because you are always going to have people who want to do fusion-y groups. And when we sat down, I said, we can do this and we can do it with a lot of integrity, or we can just say, no, we're above that. And so it's been really exciting. We've been working on this concept for about 3 years now. We've test driven it. And it got the green light. So we're going to be in go mode.
That is exciting. I guess it's heartening to hear that a classical Pilates company, rather than just bemoan how the fitness industry is detracting from the classical industry, to actually see Peak Pilates as stepping up and going, well, we are going to bring good Pilates to the fitness industry.
Yeah, and this is a group program, so it's totally aimed at the instructor who wants to do groups, or the big box gym who wants to do groups, or the boutique, or even really the virtual teacher who wants to teach a little more different choreography. And there's room for all of us. And I do believe that there is a big difference. Like, I would never want to teach personally privates this way. To do a group like this can be a lot of fun, and it's going to attract people. And when people get attracted, they go, well, what else is out there? And they start opening doors, and then they go, oh, here's the classical door. Wow, that's pretty exciting.
Right.
Hopefully.
It's our gateway drug to traditional Pilates.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
And even if people never go any farther, you're still doing, to me, a good service.
Exactly. Well, I mean, Zoe, it's been so lovely chatting to you. Just one final thing for our viewers out there. What would be one thing that people would find surprising to hear about you?
Oh, I know a lot of surprising things, but probably the thing that surprises people the most, well, two things. One, I was a Marine, and I was the first female to train male troops back in 1974. I was an experiment. Um, that was pre-Title IX, so dating myself. Um, and then I was a bodybuilder. I won the national naturals in 1997 at the age of 40. So um, I think people are a little surprised by that background, but it's all rich and fertilize.
Well, it's not only surprising, but inspiring, awe-inspiring, really.
So, well, thank you. You know,
Well, thank you so much for joining us. I know how busy you are, and we really do appreciate you taking some time out to share a bit of an insight into yourself and into Peak Pilates with us today.
well, thank you for your curiosity.
You're more than welcome. Well, have a lovely day, and we look forward to hopefully catching up with you again soon.
Awesome. See you later, Trevor. Bye
Bye
bye.
bye.